Hello and welcome to MIP TV. And with me, of course, is Bob Cook, who is going to do his book review. And we've got a really popular book, one that virtually every counselling student in the world, I think I'm exaggerating, has written, and it's Counselling for Toads. It is such a popular book. What do you think is the kind of attraction to this? It's so loved in the world of counselling and psychotherapy, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it takes us back to our childhood days. That's why, and I think our own kids identify with the different characters, and it's through the narrative. I think people really enjoy this book, and of course, I would have been a narrative therapist if I'm not seen as one now, really. So, but I think it's the way it captures, identifies with their own child ego state.
Yeah, and when we talk about narrative therapists, this is very much based on the characters of Wind in the Willows. That very well loved, certainly here in the UK book. And it's Rat, it's Badger, it's Toad, isn't it?
And it's
Heron, and the great pals, and they get into all sorts of mischief. And then the author, and I think it's Robert Debord, picks up the childhood story with the little group of friends being very worried about Toad, who's not been feeling very well, not been himself, has he? And they stage an intervention, don't they? They stage an intervention.
Stage an intervention.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is about transaction analysis, using the PAC personality model as a way of identifying and working with depression.
Yes.
And that's really why I picked it, because out of these 61 books, 50 are TA books. And I couldn't really go into our 60th or 61st book without going back to a book which is, at least, I think, now I've tried to work it out, might even be 30 years old. I can't remember when it came out, but first read it probably late 80s. I don't know if you remember. Yeah,
well, I remember reading it as a student. I read it 2000 time.
Yeah. I get lots of people on my 101. That's the introduction to TA.
Yes.
At the Manchester Institute. And I say, what brought you on here? What brought you here? And there's a multitude of reasons. But quite often when I say, have you read anything about transaction analysis? And I say, the Toad, Counselling for Toads. And they think it's the most marvellous book. And so I revisited the book. And I was particularly taken by the character played by the Heron.
Yes.
Now, the Heron is the counsellor.
Yes.
And you're quite right, Ratty, they get together and they do an intervention because poor old Toad is depressed.
He is. He's not himself, is he?
They go to Toad Hall, and he's there slumped down, and they have to get into the hall. I see him slumped there, and then Badger, who plays the critical parent mostly, does this intervention with his pals, and they get hold of Heron out of the daily sort of Echo paper or whatever it is.
Yes.
And Heron brings him in and says, "Okay, it's £40 an hour."
Yes.
Puts the boundaries down and teaches him, and does quite a lot of educative therapy, if you like, to start off with, teaching about how the enactments of the past and the present. But what I like particularly is teaching him transactional analysis, and particularly the theory of personality, parent, adult, child, in a very simple way, which everybody can understand.
Yes, and I like the boundary that Heron set, where I can remember this part because I was really shocked where Heron was saying, why have you come to therapy? Well, my friends say that I'm not well, and he goes on and on and on, and then Heron says to him, "Who's paying for this?"
Yeah, and he says, you don't want my money. My money is good as anything. And he goes into a sort of infantile strop.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful story, and teaches. What's interesting is, for a TA therapist anyway, is quite a lot of the early stages with the heron and the toad, as I said, is almost what I call educative therapy, where he goes to the board and teaches him a model of understanding himself.
Yes, he's like a winged Eric Byrne, really, isn't he?
That's a very good way to put it. Probably a little bit more sense of gravitas, I don't know, but
Yes.
he really teaches the child. And I was with a client today, where I had reviewed this book yesterday again for the first time for a long time. And I got up to the board and taught this new client, to see him about 3 sessions, about the natural child feelings, because this person was so cognitive. The book is very good, talking about, how do you actually get somebody to identify feelings when they don't understand what feelings are.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful book. It's packed with nostalgia for those of us who were brought up with Wind in the Willows, and maybe a more gentle pace of life, Bob, I think.
Yeah.
What I do like, and this is a spoiler, so if you are listening to me and you don't want me to divulge the end, now's the time to turn the headphones down or unplug them. But what I thought was really, really interesting, one of the things about Toad was he does come from this very free child ego state. And one of the things that Heron helped him with was to say, don't abandon it altogether.
No.
Don't abandon it. Access that child, but do it in a place that's responsible and also appropriate. And what happened was that, and turn your headphones off definitely now, was that I seem to remember that Toad joined an acting group where he could act out his kind of outlandish personality, but it was in a safe place. He wasn't hanging around with those stoats and those weasels who traditionally in the original book got him into a bit of trouble. You need to stay away from stoats and weasels, Bob, don't you?
No, yeah, I agree. And I really like the way the critical parent or controlling parent, which is really the correct term, was identified. And when the Toad says, okay, I understand now that when I'm in my critical parent, which really should be controlling parent, by the way, but I'm, coming from my parent who was a very strict figure. But how come, he said, how come I'm not like that? And the heron teaches him about how come he's not like that, and also teaches him about how he's hard on himself.
Yes.
Taken the parental interject of his father and is doing exactly the same to himself. But because he's so adapted, his external transactions are pleasing.
Absolutely. So you're talking of a clear injunction and driver situation here.
Don't exist, don't belong, don't be you, don't be important. They're all there, and fantastically, another bit I like. The heron teaches him about transference.
Yes. How did you remind me? I've forgotten that. How does he teach him about that?
Because the Toad says, Heron, I've been thinking about this, but you remind me sometimes of my father when he's so grumpy. Or the projection was grumpiness.
Yes.
And he teaches him about the idea that we project onto other people in the transference, and how we operate with others is often enacted from childhood. And at the end,
yes,
really like the chapter 14, there's 15 chapters, I think. He's talking to, they sort of recapped the last 15 weeks of therapy, or however long it is. And he said, do you know, Helen, he said, and they were talking, he said, what I really like about what's happened here is that you've grown up. And he said, and Toad said, what do you mean by that? Well, through these sessions, you've challenged me, you've been angry with me, you've let go some of these infantile drives, and you're far more in your adult ego state. So developmentally, you've grown up. Basically, he didn't actually say it, but basically, our job is done.
Yes, that contract is at an end, and it really is. It really is a wonderful book, and it reminds me very nostalgically of my training, because it was read by virtually everybody on my training course. I know of at least one student or peer of mine who read it and thought now that she was on the wrong course. We did a person-centered course. And
Well, of course. Well, of course. He's teaching another model of development, which is transaction analysis.
yes.
The most proactive way.
Yes, it is a wonderful book, and some of the quotes in it, I think, because it was written in the 80s, and it does have that kind of zeitgeist, that spirit of the age, and there's one part where I think Badger was a bit grumpy because someone thought he was a Tory, which I thought was a conservative.
Yeah, and at the end again, he talks about you're right, because Heron is talking about. This process is because he's talking about I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
Teaching Toad about when he comes from I'm okay to you're okay,
Yeah.
etc., etc. And he's relating that to a very humanistic tradition.
Yes.
Because he talks about the I'm okay, you're okay positions and the 4 existential life positions, which he teaches Toad,
yes.
and said being in the I'm okay, you're okay is an attitude, it's a way of being, it's proactive contract, if you like, and it's in the humanistic tradition.
Absolutely, it is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful book. And one of the things I like particularly about this is that it's an audio book and it's obviously a written book. You can get it on Kindle. But also, what the author was very clever at doing, I think, was he wrote it in the same narrative style as the original book, Wind in the Willows. So if you're reading it, it's almost seamless. The writing for me seems so familiar.
You're right, and I've listened to it the last couple of days again on Audible, and you're absolutely right. And the people they've got actually doing the narration fit. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it the way you just said it. Fits seamlessly into that earlier book.
Yes. Well, there we go. It's a wonderful book, Counselling for Toads. We're going to put a link in the link below so you can have a look or you can get the audio book. As always, Bob doesn't get paid for these book reviews. He does them for the love of them. And we'll see you in the next video. But before you go, comments. Have you read this book? Put a comment in the comment bar below. What's your favourite book? Let's hear from you. What book would you like us to review? It may be you've got a favourite book and Bob's or I've read it. Tell us which one you'd like us to review and we'll do that for you. So until the next review, we'll see you later.
Yeah, bye-bye.